Today the topic is product carriers at the edge of AI. So it's going to be like both about how you manage your career as a product manager with the AI, the AI wave, but also if you want to apply product management to AI products. So I think everybody's gonna have like a lot of insights to grab here, and yeah, really looking forward to start the talk. But first of all, I wanted to give you a bit of context about the job market, because we are a community of people working in hundreds of startups, thousands of product managers, and everybody's questioning constantly the market. So I wanted to give you a quick like heads up if you're wondering right now how the product market, job market is. And it's cool because Lenny's newsletter they provided recently, like I think 3 weeks ago, a whole new analysis of the market, data-based. And what we see is that after the bubble burst in 2022-23, we're seeing that there's a trend up in open PM jobs right now. It's data across the world, but really super influenced by the US market, basically. So what you see is mostly maybe 70-80% of US trends here. And also AI PM jobs are exploding. So you see the trend with the PM job classic, and AI PM jobs are really exploding. So maybe talk a little bit about that today with you, Eduardo. But this is a bit of context broadly and mostly US market. And right now the trends in France is that for the last months, what we've seen is a super focused market on really senior PM ICs. So individual contributors for product people, bringing market expertise. It was really a mandatory element if you wanted to grab a job in the market. We have also a lot of founding product, also founding design profiles, because early stage startups are really dynamic right now, mostly with AI projects. And what we're seeing right now since a few weeks is that now mid-level ICs are back, and the trend is up on 3 to 5 years experienced product managers, which is something new right now in the market. And we have a lot of job opens on this at the product crew. So few insights and recommendation if you are looking for a role right now or thinking about your next move is really your track record, your business track record is really key. So you must make the work on really taking your history of PM roles and really checking your business impact on each role, and really emphasizing this in your next conversations for recruitment. Also, really leverage your market expertise, whether it's in green tech, ed tech, fintech, AI products development, or health tech, also e-commerce. All those are really valorized right now in the market. So the only thing is that reconversion remains hard. So if you are in a reconversion on products, really focus on your top 5% skill. For example, top 5% sectorial experience in, let's say, fintech or e-commerce. So that's a little bit of the overall context. And we see that the trend is up, so it's really positive right now. And I said at the product crew, we do have a lot of open roles right now for product managers, from 3-5 experience to still a lot of senior roles, up to CPOs. So if you are looking for your next role right now, you can match with the jobs here, and we will basically take all your criteria, you share it with us in 5 minutes, and we match you with top roles. And like I said, it's mostly in green tech, ed tech. We have a bit of ad tech, fintech, e-commerce. So I will put also the link in the chat afterwards if you're interested. And also, I always share this because basically, whether you're searching or not, everybody wants to know about the salary trends right now. So we've pushed the latest edition of our study, 2012, 2 months ago. So you can access that as well just by taking the QR code here. Okay, let's see how many people are in the room right now. Okay, we're increasing. That's good. I think we're getting there. So let's maybe start with the talk today with you, Eduardo. Thanks for being here. Super cool to have you. I know I've been kind of teasing the live today, so people know a little bit about your experience. But I would love to have you basically share what, what's been the red thread of your career, the main things, because you had quite a journey from Brazil to France, startup, VC, Qonto, then big tech. Can you share like a little bit of the red thread about all that?
Yeah, sure. So first, bonjour à tous. Thanks for being there. Thanks for being there on your lunch break. So I hope like it's worth your lunch break time. Thanks, Matthias, again for the invitation. So yeah, so as you said, I'm Brazilian. Born and raised on like the northeast of Brazil, and I lived most of my life in a city called Recife. And I studied computer engineering, but very early in my education, I understand that I was not a good developer. Like I understand that I liked a lot everything related to IT, tech, startups, but like I was not good. And the moment that actually synced was when I started my own startup with 3 friends. And the time that took for some of them to do stuff that for me it was the whole day, it's like 2 hours, and I was like, hey, I don't even started. But on the other side, I love talking with the clients. I talk like understanding the landscapes, in the competitors, try to understand how that worked. I also got involved in the whole startup ecosystem on my city, Recife. And that's when I got the chance and the lucky chance to start working on as an investor. Like I started first in accelerator, then I went to work in a VC company, which was super cool. I was like 20 something, 24, and like I had the chance to invest. And I think at the time I have 36 different companies. It was we invested in the whole of Brazil, and it was amazing. But like I got super like, okay, I'm too young to be telling CEOs what they need to do. Who am I like reading books and telling them like, hey, you're doing something wrong? And then I had the chance to join the first startup. And I think the funny thing is that now, of course, like we have everything about PM. That was 2016. I didn't know much about the PM role, but I was lucky to be a colleague of the CEO of this startup. It's called like now Ecognia, which is still going on. It's one of the great Brazilian startups. And he was like, Dudu, that's my nickname, which is a very weird nickname here in France. My kid has a Dudu, but my nickname in Brazil is Dudu. And my friend told me, like, hey, like, business, and I have a sales guy in São Paulo trying to do stuff, but he can't talk with the engineers. Like something bad's going on. And tech as well. So I think you're going to be fitting this thing in the middle quite perfectly. I said, sure, I'd love to do that. And for me, that's still the main reason to be a PM. Like it's like you are the one connecting the dots between those two very different worlds. Could be like if it's a sales-driven organization, could be like this. If it's a B2C, it's like feeling the user, thinking about that. So I worked on this startup. I moved to São Paulo within that startup. Then I found another job in one of at the time, the first company that Anderson Horowitz invested in Brazil. It was Loft. That was the first time and then pandemic happened. And then I won't go much. We can talk more about what I did on those jobs when we go for some questions. But then I think the main thing is like pandemic happened. I was like stuck in a small apartment in São Paulo, and I was thinking like, I don't think that's a life I want right now. And like at the time, I was like, there's 2 possible paths. One is do the nomad lifestyle, go back to the northeast of Brazil, by the beach, learn how to surf and work on tech, or maybe change areas and like find a European job, find places that I could go in Europe. Like I had never lived abroad, had never worked in English or French. And then I was very lucky to find a job in Qonto here. I did the process. It was I got an offer, and then I moved without knowing a word in French. And then that's how I joined Qonto. And then after a bit more than 2 years at Qonto, I found one of the few spots here to work at Google within Paris. And that's it. And that's now I'm a PM on YouTube. And and I think that's kind of like the overall story, but we can go more deeper on the thing they did.
Yeah, it's great because you've been kind of like scaling like a startup, but by moving roles. And I would like to roll back actually to the moment where you moved from VC to products. What made you do this shift? And do you think it's something like common to move from VC to product?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think the main reason is that I wanted to operate. I think like VC is a very good job. it's a very good job if you're old because you did a lot of stuff and then like you're teaching, mentoring people. But I felt as an associate, I felt a lot of FOMO of like not being the one driving the decisions. And also like VCs firms are usually like small firms. So there's some growth, but there's limited growth because you won't be the senior partner. Like you are in a partnership, you have your like zero something percent of the firm, but then like you're not necessarily growing within the role, which is cool. And but I think when you're young, you actually want to explore different things. And then like at the time, I was actually thinking like, should I go to a bigger firm? Should I move to São Paulo to find something else? But then like I think in the end, I was not looking for a product job, but I think the job found me, and I think it was the perfect move to be like on the operation side. I know a lot of like early associates, they go to create their own company, which is a very valid path. They can become their CPOs or CEOs. I think that's even more common than joining like actually a high growth startup. But I think the change was really positive because it kind of blended my formal like kind of education, engineering, all of that with the business knowledge that you get by investing and understanding like 1,000+ companies to invest in a few of those.
Yeah, sure. And at which point did you actually start working on a data-heavy problems kind of role? Because VC was more like data analytics for basic investing, and then you moved. Was it in the first startup, or then
Yeah.
at Qonto that you started to really have like some very technical type of subjects to onboard?
No, it was just like the first like task I was given when I joined InLoco. So InLoco at the time it was called InLoco. It was a company that was ad tech as an advertisement. So they had the own SDK for like location purpose, and they had like a better way of target people based on their locations. And at the time they started like a joint venture to build a, let's say, security product. Like instead of relying on location just to give advertisement, which is what runs the internet, what powers the internet. But like there was a path at the time. Some people might know like the Brazilian fintech ecosystem is really advanced, and the time was like a lot of fintechs were growing, and they had a lot of fraud because like a lot of people were like just getting different documents in the internet and opening accounts. And so there are specific banks that needed a product to say, hey, is this person really the person they're saying to be? Like, can we prove that like the document, the location is actually what they do? So InLoco was targeted to do like this product, like can we kind of say that the person is actually living in that place? And to be able to do that, like we needed to run a lot of data. So, and at the time, like there was no, like we were very young, and like the companies know there was no proper infrastructure. Like we sometimes we had to run jobs for like 1 week, things broke, we need to run again. So that was the time where I said, okay, like interesting. I have a product that there's no UI in a sense. I don't have any proper like because the UI was done by someone else, but they actually had an API that said like, hey, I have this document, this address, and is this person on this place? And we had to give like with some certain confidence. At the time we called heuristic. Today we would call AI for sure. But at the time we said we had an heuristic that tried to come up with that place was like their workplace, their home place, or if they have any specific kind of interest on that specific address they did. And that was the first moment that I started because I needed to understand the need and also work with the engineers to get that in a high quality, try to put metrics, like a lot of things that I didn't even know we needed, like SLA, all of those things. But like for maybe my first 1.5 years there, that was my main product was taken care of.
Okay, awesome. And so yeah, it was basically machine learning at the time, not the AI, not the Gen AI that we know today, but it was your first really applied experience on machine learning. And then you moved to Qonto. And did you keep a very technical role there at Qonto, or did you move to some different type of skill?
Yeah. Before
and
moving to
stuff?
Qonto, I went to work at Loft, which was like what we call now prop tech. So the company bought apartments, renovated apartments, put apartments to sale. And I also joined, and maybe because of my because of my experience in local, I was targeted to build the pricing system of the company. So that's again like here I was talking with way less data points, but way more sophisticated models, because I needed to work very closely with our data science team to price apartments. And like literally had to create the data that we need to do that. I had to go to notaries, buy paper, scan that, process. It was crazy pipeline that today would be way easier. But like I think that's where like I actually even understand more about data science, because mostly I was doing, I would say like at local first was mostly big data, like how we handle and take value of high volume of data and transform that in a product, deliver that on an API. Where Loft, like we had way less data, but we needed to be way more sophisticated on doing that. When I moved to Qonto, it was really interesting job because it was a very like kind of full stack kind of job. Because at Qonto, I was the PM responsible for the cards team. At first I started in IC, then we built like the team on that. And handling cards at Qonto literally meant to do the very cool things like we launched the flash cards, like our burner cards, like we launched Apple Pay. We launched the new card design, and literally I went to the factory to check like samples, different things, packaging, all of that. But in the end, we had the actual valuable work of like making sure the transactions happen. Like we needed to, like my dashboard was mostly looking at like the transaction numbers and seeing like why those things are failing, or optimizing our conversion funnel, like why we are dropping like 70% on this step, what's going on. So it was different in a sense. There was no proper AI, but it was still very analytical.
Yeah, I get it. All right, but it's good. It's yeah. So when, maybe a question, at which point did you feel like you were becoming a sort of AI product manager? Was it from the first startup where maybe actually the denomination, the name was not even existing? And now at YouTube, obviously, this is more obvious for you. Is there a moment where you started to feel like you were specializing in ML powered products, or like is it just a fancy word, AI PM, AI product manager right now? We see that it's doubling down in terms of amount in the job market. And what's your point on that? What's your opinion on all that based on your personal experience?
I think for sure there's some hype, and we go back to that. But I think there was a moment like when I was Loft that I understand that I was quite good on building products like without interface. Like I used to call like invisible products. Like I understand that like my skill set was really good on that part, because I think the why is that like I managed to translate the customer needs and also for leadership without necessarily building a UI. You could deliver value by necessarily not working directly with UX. At Qonto was good because I managed to do also work with UX, like UX writing, all of that, and actually build more of my UX kind of like muscle. But I think when I lost, I said, okay, that's something I'm good at, is like understanding how data can power like product experiences. Of course, I'm going to call today myself an AI PM because like that's a kind of the trendy word. But and today, like I think there's with Gen AI, like I think the AI is going more like high stack. So it's less only about the classic machine learning classifiers, what Caparti called software 2.0. Now we're talking about software 3.0, where it's like mostly using English as a like programming language. And like I think now we need more PMs on that because there's more software, that will be different software to be built. But I think that's it. Like I think when I was that, okay, I think that's a very important muscle that I have, something very good that I've learned was around Loft.
Okay, and so today, can you explain what's your role? How would you explain your role at YouTube today, and what does your team do?
Yeah. So let's see how it's so. Within YouTube, like all like big companies, we have organizations. Like our team here in Paris, like I think interesting thing, like we have around 100 people here in Paris working on YouTube. PMs we have 3, so but like all of the rest of them is engineers, not that many PMs. But we are within what we call the core X organization, which is like the core experience. Like it's the team who handles recommendations and the main app part. So our tagline is like we are viewer, we are a user kind of organization. We take care of like what the user. And one misconception, people say, oh, YouTube PMs like want to optimize money. we don't even have money as a metric. Like, we care about the user. You want the user to, of course, watch more YouTube, but we want YouTube to be watched in a responsible way. So you can even search that on Google. In 2019, Neo, at the time was our CPO, which is our CEO right now, he defined what we call the 4 R's of responsibility. So that's how YouTube handles recommendations. So, and also the content, the platform. So we have like remove, which like it's the content that goes beyond like our community guidelines. You cannot upload porn on YouTube. You cannot upload like very violent stuff. We have reduce, so it's like we believe that recommendations are a privilege, not a right. So you need to be, we have tools, and that's kind of where we work on reducing content. The other two things that is a bit far from me, it's like reward. So of course you can be monetized, and that's part of what makes YouTube great, that we actually share our money with creators, different than all of the other platforms. And then we have raise as well. Like, we believe that there's some type of content that can be recommended, should be actually raised, like important news and this kind of stuff. So my team here, we work on this pillar of reduce, and we work in a family of classifiers that try to understand the content and define if this content like has some characteristics that would not make them worth being recommended. One of the visible things we do is what we call age restriction. So YouTube has a protection that came from Europe as a regulation in Europe, that if we deem content not be appropriate for an under 18-year-old, we're gonna age gate that content. So a person needs to verify their age to be able to watch that. And we are the team doing that.
Okay, that's super cool. And at the same time, you can tell that yeah, I think you're not working like on necessarily the AI fancy stuff, you know, and that's what I liked about our conversation when we prepared this talk. Like AI PM, like you said, is super hyped right now, but at the same time, it can be highly technical. It's not necessarily I don't know, like as sexy as some people would imagine. What do you agree with that? And what's your message maybe to PMs willing to move to AI PM world and thinking maybe it's super sexy, and how should they look at this topic?
I think the first thing is like this new Gen AI stuff. It's super new, super unreliable, and super expensive. So of course, like, we're doing a lot of things. That's Gemini. That's freaking Google. Like, we're doing a lot of things on that. But that's the future, like, for sure. Like, and we're going to go there. Like, the cost will go down, everything will go down. Like, everything will get better. Like, one of my favorite sentences right now is that this is the worst that's ever gonna be, like, the AI. So it's gonna get better. But what we do is what we've been doing for maybe 10 years now at YouTube, is the classic like machine learning, but where we need to build ground truth, and then we build classifiers to fit that. That's way more expensive machine-wise. Like, why we need like some dozens of TPUs to do one thing with Gemini? We do that with a simple like some grids of like CPUs. We don't need like even the fancy TPUs. You're not fighting for anyone for resources for doing that. So I think that's it. And I think secondly is I think more than specifically the two, and of course we're gonna have like proper Gen AI like thing, gonna be like working on. I don't know if it's that's fancy, like working on prompts, improving things, doing evals, like a lot of things will need to be done. But I think the main skills and properties of what a PM within AI needs to do, it's kind of the same. Like, in the end, trying to solve always solving the user pain, and you need to work on the same kind of features, metrics, precision, recall, understand all of that to kind of move forward.
And do you need to know how to code or understand ML architectures if you want to lead AI project as a PM?
I don't think you need to code. Like, you need to be data literate. Like, you need to understand for sure. You need to be able to do some queries. Now with Gemini, it gets even easier. Like, you can do queries like easily. You can ask them. But you definitely need to understand some statistics and like some of the metrics. Like, it's really hard to move forward with like a machine learning discussion if you don't know like precision, recall, because that's kind of the core when thinking on classifiers, and even when thinking on more like a Gen AI based models, that all of those things are somehow statistics, right? Like even if we define quite clearly what we want to achieve, you're going to have some number of like a precision recall. You need to understand what that means. How can I tweak that? You can be able to read like a PR curve and say, okay, our classifier is improving. So architecture wise, like I'm working with the most brilliant engineers here. Like I would not dare to tell them like, oh, should you try something differently? Or like, oh, I use XBoost in my last job. Maybe you should do it. Like they handle that. But the main questions, the how to evaluate stuff, what's the actual problem we're trying to solve, what the trade-offs we're willing to do, that's still the PM job, and that's still kind of very important.
Gotcha. Okay. So I understand you still need to have a strong analytical background or understanding, but you don't need to be a super highly technical, hands-on in the techniques person.
At least here at Google, I would say no. Maybe for a smaller startup, you need to be, depending on how strong or not is your ML team and your like engineering team, you might need to step a bit more. You need to maybe be discussing and bring more things on the table, but here no.
Roger that. And well, that's super interesting. I'm going to move to the next topic, which is about scaling your product thinking. But there's a lot of interesting stuff that you've been sharing here. If you guys have more questions on that, feel free to put them in the chat, and I will be happy to grab them at the end and do a bit of reinforcement on the AIPM questions. But I noticed you worked in early stage startup. Now you moved to the biggest tech companies. In the meantime, you were in scale-ups. So can you share a bit about how your product mindset has been evolving through those steps in your career?
That's a good question. I think the core of what I think a PM should be doing is the same. And every time I change jobs or I grow up, like we always ask this question. Like I remember when I joined my first startup, like there was engineers, they were like, what's your job? Like, why are you here? Like, you're not writing code for me, like, and you're not selling, like, why you're seated next to me? And I think what's evolved to me and understand even more is that the need of like, not necessarily PMs, but like the product function, like the branch of like the guy from like Airbnb saying, hey, we don't need PMs. I think we might not need a person called PM, but we need the product function, because the ability to close those gaps between what the user needs and actually how to build things, it's a bit big. Some people might say might be closer, like maybe I was discussing with an engineer yesterday and we're discussing, hey, with AI, who's going to lose the jobs, you or me? Because he was like, oh, if the engineer was like, if they can code, I can spend less time, I can think on product. I said the same thing, like I can just think in product and ask the machine to code. So we are joking, like who would lose our first job? But I think the product function will be really hard to be removed from the existence. And I think when I see my career and growing up, like from the scales ups in Google, I think the main difference now at Google is that I think when you are like in a startup, you need to survive, you need to launch, and you are less interested on the unintended effects of your concept of what you're doing. You're interested on, we need to launch this. Like, we need to increase our revenue, so we need to launch this product that might increase that. You might ask, oh, maybe this could cannibalize our thing. You can do some things, but you are way closer to the action and you want to launch those things quickly. Here at Google, like we have way more scrutiny on like the things we're doing. And like we, instead of just thinking on the thing we need to launch, we try always to step one step back and say, hey, like what are the principles? Like why we're trying to do that? How that's going to impact? Because usually it's very interesting. Like we go for product reviews. We don't need like most of my job, but like VPs are less interested on like how the UI look like, but they're more interested like what the principles, so how, like what is the guidelines that we're driving to take these decisions? Because if they're aligned with the guidelines, the details they trust the team will make to do it. So I think that's the main difference. I never thought really on big trade-offs or like thinking more. We usually go practical, like we look at the data, we do a spreadsheet, and we say, okay, if you do that, definitely we might solve that problem. While in big tech, or at least here on YouTube and Google, we always ask PMs to be really principled, like, and look on like, okay, how should we do and why we're doing that, what are the guidelines, and then the rest can follow.
And can I just pause a minute on the context today at Google, because I hear a lot of things about maybe the last 3 years. Some critics were saying that the pace of innovation at Google had slowed down, and now I hear exactly the opposite. I hear that there is a huge dynamic at Google. People are really like working their ass off to bring innovations to life. And I mean, it's the opportunity to ask you, like, what's your take on that? Do you feel a change of dynamic at Google today? And how does it look like for you right now, the overall context and environment of working there?
I think first thing, I joined on those 3 years. So like you showed your charts in the beginning of the end of like the bubble. I was right there, like the thing was going down, but I was able to jump in the bus like just before it moved. So I know the current, but it's so funny. I see like on Twitter and like LinkedIn, and I was like, I need to answer this person. Like the amount of people working on all those challenging problems, it's incredible. And I think Google has one perspective that's, for me, it's still hard to know how to work with that. Google is very messy and it's very bottoms up. So everyone can try to do anything. Like literally my team, if I want today, I can do an experiment on the homepage of YouTube without asking for permission. It'd be 0.1%, but I can do it. And like, and I can bring the experiment results. So we are always looking, like there's enough teams at the same time, maybe sometimes working the same project, but that's in purpose. That's how we create all the products we create, and that's how we innovate. It's like letting different teams work on things. But the hard thing to understand is that the improvements we do are very incremental. Like it's hard on a company like Google to do very huge 0 to 1 launches, because we're not starting from zero. Like I have a good example within YouTube. Like we launched Shorts. Shorts for like a big tech or YouTube thing, it's kind of a new thing. We have between 4 and 5 years as a product compared to VOD, which has like 20 years now. VOD, that's how we call long format. And we cannot just say like, okay, let's today we want to launch Shorts and we want to kill TikTok. Let's just recommend to everyone a short period, day 0. What would happen? Like we would have like a viewership would go down. Like our current creators would be pissed. Like people would be pissed, but oh, we recommended that. So we cannot move brusquely, but we can tweak things slightly. We can do many different increments that like, okay, that's an interesting thing to tell. When I joined, we have a lot of internal launch, like, oh, I launched this thing, and I came for startup. So I saw one of those first launch, and they said, we increased something on 0.3%. And I was like, why are you celebrating that? Like, how are you celebrating 0.3 like percent increase in the metric? At that time, I was like at startup, like if you're not moving 15%, 20%, 50, 100, you're not doing a job. But then the thing is, we have enough teams doing 0.5, 0.3 on those all incremental launches that at the end of the year, we double the viewership. We make sure like shorts are being as profitable for the creator as long form by time field. So I think that's the main misconceptions, that like when you are like on our startup mindsets, that things don't look to be changing very quickly. Google homepage is the same, right? Like a lot of people say, oh, YouTube didn't change much. Like if you see a screenshot from 2 years ago, you're gonna see that's very different. But we do a lot of incremental things that adds up to pace of innovation and growth of actually startups. But like that's why it's still like revenue grows a lot. But I think that's the main thing. And we're not working directly with that. Like I work with them for some products, but like Gemini, Google DeepMind, those guys are working super hard.
Yeah, I hear that too from many sources. Super interesting. I think it's time to move to a little bit of career and PM career growth topics, and I see many questions popping on that. Interested about like the question of Yomi is asking you basically about, we said in intro that right now the market experience, the sectorial experience is super valuable, basically, and valorized by the recruiters. But at the same time, you said you moved from Qonto to Google in the last 3 years, so you're totally counter intuitive example of that. So this is going to be a good question for you, basically, like how do you basically change industry and still make sense with your I mean, how do you get relevant to change industry as a product? Because lots of companies want the market experience. You don't have it. You want to change. Do you have any tips for them? And for Yomi specifically?
Yeah, I think market sector experience is good, but I don't think it's the main thing that we should look at a PM. Like when I was hiring PMs for Qonto, like we look if they have like a fintech experience, good, but we're way more interested on their PM skills because, of course, there are like markets that should be very like biotech should be quite hard to break into. Like some markets, like they have some specific like game, like it's very specific like kind of stuff. But I think if you think about edtech, fintech, property, or even some like AI business B2B SaaS, in the end, the market is good because you already know the metrics, so you have some leverage. So I think the main tip, in a sense, like you need to be really good on the other parts. You need to be really good on your PM skills. You need to be really strong on like let's say the hard skills, like you know how to understand, you build a roadmap, the spreadsheet, explain stuff, understand data. And you should be really good on your soft skills. You need to be a great leader. You need to know how to motivate your team. So the pillar of the market experience, I think, is less important. But a tip for interviews is you need to research. You need to do your freaking research. Like now we have enough tools, Notebook LLM, Gemini, whatever, to do your research. So if you're coming for an interview at Qonto and you work on like ag tech or something else, try to understand what's the Qonto landscape, why it's important, what's B2B accounts, like what are the main metrics, what a PM on that role should do. But I think if you're competing with someone that's as good as you and also has experience, you might lose. But then you need to be really focused on the PM skills and showing how good you are. Like you mentioned in the beginning, like show what's your background, like your track record of, and then be smart on transferring, do your research, and then transfer what you did before to the new market you're doing. Because in the end, we are in the business of selling stuff to someone.
Yeah, totally. And maybe let's take an example, a concrete example, because right now many PM want to work in AI. So I don't know if it's a sector as fintech, but still it's specifics. And what should they actually focus on to make that jump? The PMs want to move to AI PM roles. To your opinion?
That's a good point. I think personally, I really think that we're going for like a transformation in the market. I think quite similar or maybe even more extreme than what happened on the 70s and 80s, where we went from paper to like spreadsheets to email, like like we give CC on emails because it is named based on carbon copies, because you said like, please copy this carbon copy to this other person that needs to receive the same document. And there was a office boy that went around and said, you are the recipient of this one, that's true, it's for you, but then I have carbon copies for other people that need to know. Like, that's crazy to think like that. And I think we're going for transformation on that. So I think the first tip I would give, and that's what I'm trying to do right now, is like, how can I observe myself and be working on those tools? I don't know, like some of you might be old enough as me, like to had to go to actual informatics schools to learn how to use Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel. We went for schools to do that. I think now we need to think similarly. We need to think, okay, like we have all those tools, those are the transformations. So I think if you're trying to crack, first think on how you leverage that for your job, and then try the tools. Like try to do your day job with that. Maybe I think there's 3 steps on that. I think the first one is like, just try to do what we do using those tools. Like that might take even some more time in the beginning, but then you learn. The second step is you might be able to do your work in half of the time. And then you have two options here. You have the option like how I use the other half of my time. You can just go out earlier, enjoy the summer, or you can say, okay, maybe I can do double the things I could do at my job, and I can be leveraging that even more and being like a, let's say, 5x PM or 2x PM. And I think the third thing is go beyond your current scope. And now I think a lot of people used to say, oh, I would love to be able to do CS, but at the time I was not good in math, etc. Now, like the new programming language is English. We have Lovable, we have enough like Winter, we have enough tools now that you can vibe code. And I think that would be my last tip on that, like start using those things. Because I think those jobs will be very competitive because everyone, of course, wants to jump in the trend. Everyone wanted to build an app in late 2010s because that's who we knew where the things were going. Some people went to crypto. That didn't turn out so well, but like that's a different conversation.
That's a miss out.
Yeah, that's a different part. But I think use those things because the more, let's say, AI literate you are, the better position you be. Because also there's not that many of us that are already working with AI. It's different than fintech. It could be not working fintech, but it could be working in Societe Generale, and that's your former. But there's not that many of us that are actually working with AI. So everyone will be competing the same level. So I think it's embrace, enjoy, and use that as. And I think one thing that one trap should not fall is don't follow the news that much. Like, oh, there's enough like new models, new things, and like VO3. That's interesting to get to know, but that's entertainment. My main tip is
Yeah,
like use the things, use that on your day-to-day job because that will help you have more free time, and then expand your scope because then when you go for an interview, you're gonna say like, "Here, here's what I built. Here's what I need to do. Here's like how I use those things. Here's how I've been using those things for the last 1 year. Here's what I learned," and I think that would be very valuable.
yeah, 100%. Like cut the noise on basically the news and look at the the actual insights on how to build your own stuff with AI and basically maybe replace your job and automatize a lot of things with within your current scope to free time and keep learning. And I noticed you mentioned software 3.0, so I guess you've been looking at the talk from Karpati at the AI startup school, which is on YouTube actually, from the Y Combinator.
What else would learn from? That's the tool for learning, YouTube. Like,
100%. Yeah, I'm also a lot on YouTube right now due to actually like having to learn AI, and I have to say right now YouTube is where the most like actionable content on AI for product managers and software engineers is right now for free. So it's pretty amazing. I'm actually curious about what you think the skills. Which skills helped you get into this AI PM role at YouTube? Personally, like in your case, what was it that YouTube was interested into about your skills? You said that, yeah, your product thinking. What do you think was in your case the top skills that had you that had them hire you?
to be super honest, I never thought I'd pass the process. Like, it's like I watched the videos of people doing product cases. Like, it's insane. Like the guy come to you and say, "Hey, imagine you're building Facebook for education." That's it. It's like, I did you speak 1 hour about that? And so first important thing, like at the time, like in most Google roles, they're not specifically looking for a position. Like the first part of the process is mostly evaluating you as a PM at Google. So we have like, and you can find interview guides of Google. Like I forgot all of the properties here. Like, but you're looking for analytical leadership, like product sense, product insights, all of those things. So in a sense, they're first trying to check if you are competent enough as a BMPM. Then the last part, that's what we call internally like the team match. So that's when you are assigned to a specific headcount, and then you do a specific, let's say, another process for the specific position. So when I did the interview with my current manager, like the discussion was like consumer products and machine learning, which are like, and they told me like, hey, we're going to discuss about that. And I think I was lucky that I had previous experience in working like somehow with building like data science, machine learning models. I tried to prepare the best I could, like a review. I had some, of course, background. I studied statistics like 14 years ago. Yeah, like a lot of time, even more. Yeah, like a lot of time ago. But I had to prepare myself. But I think the main thing is I was a good PM, and I prepared myself for the process as well. And that's a tip for everyone. Like, and you guys talked about that a lot, like the product group. But like hiring, like the process are, they're not evaluating as good as you are a PM. They're evaluating how good you are on interviewing for a job. And for that, you need to be prepared to be interviewed. You need to practice. You need to study, and you need to tell what they want to hear. Like you cannot just think that do whatever you want. No, there's a formula. They're waiting to hear from you, so you need to prepare that. But I think in the end, my previous experience added that I was able to do that specific job because I could be going to Chrome where I'll do zero machine learning and do something differently. And also my previous actual preparation and product experience helped me land the job.
I think what you just shared is a super relevant insight on any PM role process. It's about like putting the work in the preparation. And what I see as the main mistake from many candidates is to go all in many is to go actually too broad in the how many jobs you apply, and you do a lot of volume when you should actually go for quality and focus in your, and go actually all in 1 to 3 processes at the same time, not more. This is really super important if you want to actually get like top roles in the either big tech scale-ups like Qonto, or even founding top level like startups. Actually, you need, like you said, to do your research, to study the context of the company. Of course, there are some like super foundational skills like your analytical mind and the capacity to step up on technical subject, which cannot be overpassed, obviously. But even with that, if you don't do the research work and the high velocity work and the focus, you won't get a role there. So it's really super important to have that in mind if you want to go to shot for the moon in your product career. I think we're getting closer to the end. I wanted to talk a little bit about culture and leadership. It applied to big tech in part. Can you share with us, like, what's for you the big thing that people are misunderstanding about working in big tech, especially on a product role and maybe on AI products?
I think for me, the thing I still like, the thing that most surprised me at the work here is how messy it is, in a sense that there's no process to doing stuff. The amount of meetings I went where I wanted to ask someone for something and they actually asked me for that thing, I was like, oh, I thought, like, you know, like the Spider-Man kind of meme. You're like, I thought you were about to do that. Like, they're like, it's not your team. And we have one internal like kind of values that thrive in ambiguity, and that's kind of somehow in purpose. Like we have, of course, like Google invented OKR to popularize it, but like in the end, seems like we have specific main goals, but then like when it trickles down, different teams have different things, and anyone can do anything. If you convince enough, you can write a 2-pager and then say, I'm going to do that, and you can do it. It's very messy. And it's really hard to know for some projects, what's the next step? Can I do that? Can I launch already? Or should I ask someone for permission? And since I'm new here, like, it's even harder for me. Like, of course, you have managers that can help, etc. Like experience, and little by little, you're gonna get the reflexes. But for me, that was the main difference. Is compared with Qonto, we're very structured, like, and they take proud of the product system. It was a shock for me because I just came from Qonto where you have like visual management, everything ready, a very clear process, step. Here, nothing. PRDs, you said that there's no standard PRD document, there's no standard deck, like, and actually no one cares. Like, I never heard a VP, like, when you present something today, say, oh, your slides are not good. Like, you need to be crisp, you need to tell your message. but no one cares if you're using the old logo, the new logo, you slightly different font, or like if you didn't bring that specific thing.
So you're saying that Google is intentionally messy to actually leverage on serendipity, to kind of like they drop smart people in they drop smart people in in the system and see what happens, basically.
And one very interesting example for that, like a VP came to visit and I was not used to that. Like, and I was like, okay, like how should I behave, and etc. And I came like, okay, what's your visions for our area? And the guy's like, I have no idea. You are the one leading that. You tell me what you want to do. And I was like, what? I'm not prepared for this meeting, but I just joined. But it was really like, okay, and that's it. Like they hire the brightest minds and they say, do it. Sometimes it's messy, it's frustrating because like, why I cannot do that, or should I ask for permission, like to have some of that? But then there's a lot of waste because you try to do stuff, never goes nowhere. But that's on purpose because that's how we come up with like the things we have. That's like we have a few strategic acquisitions or directions, but like the core and the meat and the thing that makes Google different is letting people innovate, like, and letting people do their things and like promoting those persons and like valuing the people that actually drives the innovation. Because we cannot rely on one VP to say you should do that or you should do that. Like they know that cannot happen. So that's hard to leave, but it's impressive.
It must be super confusing coming from Qonto, super very rigorously organized, and then you're jumping in the.
I actually asked management. They come and they were like, "What?" It's like, no, what every person is working on. They're like, we don't know. Like, there's some OKRs. Like, we have a quarter to deliver. I was like, okay.
It's actually Tanguy in the chat was asking you about like wondering which person you interact with on the tech side and the frequency, the routines, basically what is the like at least the basics in terms of methodology and processes. Do you have something, or is it really like is there like a minimum viable OS?
No, like I think the minimum viable OS is the OKR. So of course what you need to do is on the OKR. So we have OKR planning, we have the things we promise. We have a lot of cross-team requests because like things cannot be done just by your team. So you need to add team to do stuff. So you feel that. So that's the kind of OS. It's like, hey, my team wants to do that. We promise. We say it's high priority. These teams said that they're aligned to do that. Then to actually do that is very different than most of like what I used to work in startups. That is mostly project-based, in a sense that like I currently run 3 or 4 or 5 different projects that are in different stages. And then like my goal is to those things move forward and go closer to launch. But there's no like, there's no daily meeting, there's no Scrum, there's no Kanban, there's nothing like that. Some teams could have that. And that's also the thing, like some teams can operate differently, but Google doesn't care. Like at least Google doesn't care. Like there's no, we want the people to be doing skills and launching stuff and being innovating, but like, if you do like daily or not, it's the team to decide.
And how is it like applicable to startups? This model, you think? Because Anais was asking you, like, do you think that this kind of messy management could work and should be applicable to startup? I mean, early stage startups, obviously. I mean, that's how it basically starts, and everything's super messy. But at the same time, you need to be focused on one single objective. You don't have the money and the resources of Google.
I think one thing that should be applied is ideas could come from anywhere. It could be open, bottom, like wherever it comes. It's from like the PM, the CEO, etc. And those things are way more flat. But I think startups should not waste that much like stuff, because here like it's quite wasteful, to be honest. Like there's like, even though we still launch a lot of stuff, like projects just does die in the way. Like PRDs is broken up. It's a cemetery of like dreams, like things you want to launch, you never do it. Sometimes you spend quarters working in projects and it's like direction change, things change. We think like things don't move fast, but sometimes priority changes. So I think startups should not it's not a good place to be, because then you need to survive, you need to fix the next problem, you need to keep growing, And sometimes better to have a lesser good idea, but that keeps you growing, than trying to like explore many different things. Maybe with whole vibe coding, like code starts to be less, like you can do more things at the same time, or you can try even quicker, more things. But I think like you should try to waste less, because then your time is gone. And then like I joke, like if they fire all of us PMs, like it take up 3-4 years for people to notice, because like there's a lot of things that you actually should be launched, but in a startup, no. Like if you stop launching in a quarter, you can.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we have more questions from Melody, Carolina, others about like resources to become an AIPM. Where should we start? So I think maybe we can take the question, and that would be my final question. If you were to start on a mission, on an adventure to become an AIPM today, Eduardo, what would be your action plan right now, and how would you build this next move of your career and prepare it and take action to really get to this result?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, like you need to use the tools. And I think now, like we have tools that can teach you and make your like feedback loop on learning way quicker. So I think it's like you should try to go deeper than just using ChatGPT to answer your questions or making your like reports, and trying to actually understand how it works, understand what's prompt engineering, understanding what is the vowels, like how you evaluate. Because if most products will be written by non-deterministic code, you need to evaluate those things. So if I was starting from zero, I would try to understand how those things. My main tip, like if you want to learn, party videos on YouTube. Like that's the guy is a beast, and he teaches you, like you have videos from how he uses LLMs, how you can understand how LLMs work. He building there's 3-hour videos LLM from zero. For me, it's like one of the core. I give all my friends like just stop, watch this for 3 hours, and then like you level up, and you're like, oh, that's how it works. It's Andre Caparti. I think Matthias will put.
Yes, 100%. Everybody's asking like, what's the name? So
one working on OpenAI, opening on Tesla is the best. Left all this company to keep educating people on AI. So he's do that, and then I think use the tools to learn. Like SQL, way easier to learn now, because you can like work with folks, like you can work quickly and running quick. Before you had to search how can I do count again, and you go on Google and there's one count, but it's like, oh, but that doesn't work with my thing. Now you can do that. So I think the thing is get exposed and actively work on those things. Don't use just for the like there's a part of work that's lazy work. It's fine to use for that, but don't stop there. Don't stop on saying like how can I reply to this gently and not bother someone. Like that's nice, we should always be doing that, but then go the step further and say, hey, how this actually thing works, and how can I actually incorporate it on my workflow.
Amazing. Well, I think we have an action plan. And thank you so
This
much for all
weekend,
the insights.
say,
I
hey
hope
babe,
everybody.
got a nice like Bourgogne. We watching Cup Party this evening. Like
Yeah, Carpati is the source. So good. But merci encore, Eduardo. I hope everybody in the live today, you had lots of responses to your questions, basically. And is there a way, Eduardo, to keep in touch with you?
sure, like add me on LinkedIn. When see around on product events. Maybe Matthias, we need to do some product review here at Google. We can host.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do that and invite everybody to join.
Yes, exactly. We have
Amazing.
a nice office here. 100 people can come, so we can definitely feed the room here. So
that's an invitation.
October.
100%. Push a thumb up if you guys are interested to be in the loop, and for sure we'll keep updated the community on that. And yeah, thank you, Eduardo. That was awesome. Many thanks in the chat. So I think yeah, you shared a lot of value, and I hope everybody will be inspired to take action and move to their their next adventure with that.
Avec grand plaisir.
Merci everybody.
Thanks
Merci, Eduardo,
for being lunchtime with us. Cheers.
See you soon. Chat. Hop là. Hop.